Let's examine the Indian political system as defined by the Indian Constitution uh, from the angle of or the perspective of management, the management discipline or the management as a subject. Because we have said that the basic tenet is that principles of management are universally applicable, and these can apply to all sorts of organizations, government organizations also, not only business organizations. We also many times talk about leadership, administration, management, and we talk of the CM or the PM as the CEO of a state or the CEO. Now let's look at what management says and how the political system works. It's quite interesting. The Indian political system is largely defined by the Constitution, and the Constitution was framed years ago. And people who framed that are dead. It was framed when India got independence, and a group of people led by Dr. Ambedkar, etc., framed this constitution. All good people with good intentions and all that, but they were not gods. They wouldn't be able to. They were not. They weren't people who would be able to foresee the future and all that. So, with their competence, no doubt about their competence, their abilities, the information they had that point of time, they took inputs from various sources, from various constitutions, and made it at that point of time years ago. And that is something like an organization design or organization structure of how the country should be run in a rough sense, perhaps. And it is also interesting that restructuring is very difficult here, because it's very difficult to get majority to change the constitution, and some fundamental things cannot be changed. That is the law. So that was a piece of paper that was made years ago, and it still holds sway today, and one can't really do much about it. Some people say that countries can't be compared to business organizations or companies, but there are companies. I wouldn't necessarily agree with that. There are big companies. There have been huge companies which are as good as or as big as small countries in themselves. Look at a General Motors or General Electric. Their turnover would be like equivalent to the size GDP of a very small country. So there have been very large corporations, business organizations with hundreds of thousands of employees and massive turnover, almost equivalent to the GDP of a small country. So is it true that countries are different from companies? Maybe, maybe not. It's a matter of discussion and debate. But if we look at it from a management angle, how companies are run or organizations are run, and how one runs a country, this is quite interesting and perplexing, perhaps. Can be debated. There will be a lot of discussion and debate and all that. But let's look at it anyway. If you look at the Indian Constitution, you have the legislature, that is the parliament, which makes the laws and all that. And the parliament also has two parts, the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha. Lok Sabha, members are directly elected by the public. Rajya Sabha, there is nomination from the president, and then states send members. So there is no direct election by the members of the public. So there is parliament, which is the legislature. Then there is the executive, which is the government. Then there is judiciary, which is separate, Supreme Court and courts. There is a president. Then you have states. Then you have within states you have municipalities, and then you have village level bodies like gram panchayats and village level organizations and local self-help bodies and all those kinds of things. And then there are elections at all levels. There is Lok Sabha elections, there is direct or indirect election for Rajya Sabha, There is a president who is again coming through these elected people, and the Parliament government has a role in getting the president elected. Maybe the president was set up, uh, put in place by the earlier government, and the new government has to deal with him. Then you have governors in the states. Again, the government has a say. The central government sometimes has many times has a say in appointing the governor to the state. And maybe the governor also has a tenure. So again, he changes or doesn't change. So there are elections at various levels. There are elections to state assemblies. There are elections to Lok Sabha. There are elections to municipal corporations. There are elections to village gram panchayats and local government bodies. And then there are multiple parties. So it is quite possible that you have in a city you have a municipal corporation which is largely responsible for affairs of the city, and one particular political party wins has the elections there and controls that municipality, but the city is part of a particular state, and there are elections to the state, and maybe some other political party forms the state government. Maybe the municipal government and the state government belong to the same party, or they may be belonging to different parties. Then there is the union or central government, which again is formed by one party or coalition of parties. And the state governments and the central government are not necessarily from the same party, they again are from different parties. So this is an then in a, over and above you have autonomous bodies like Reserve Bank of India and all those set up by acts of parliament. So this organization design or organization structure seems to be extremely complicated, and there is this principle of federalism where you have central government powers or union powers, powers of the union, powers of the state. And secondly, the interesting thing is one more thing I would like to say. Everybody talks about federalism, but this is competitive federalism, or federalism which is marked by rivalry or even downright hostility or enmity. Because it is not that the state has powers in certain areas and the center has power in other areas. There are lists made up in the constitution. There are subjects. The state has jurisdiction over these subjects, the center has jurisdiction over these subjects, both are involved in these subjects. So that sort of a thing is also there. This is an area in which the state can call the shots. This is an area which pertains to the state, but the center can call the shots. So there is a central list, there is a or union list, there is a state list, then there is a concurrent list where both have a say. So that is some sort of federalism where you say states have some power and states have more power in their areas pertaining to their own states. But the point is not only that, the point is that the state government and the central government may not be from the same party. So federalism, when they are both from the same party, is a different cup of tea, and federalism when they are from different parties is again a different cup of tea. And generally political parties behave almost like they are enemies. I mean, political parties come together generally only when there is an external threat like war and stuff like that. Otherwise, they are by default they are supposed to oppose each other. That's the default setting. So I do not I mean, try to talk to somebody who has run anything, an office, a business organization, or a company, and take this constitutional aspect of the organizational design, the way the country's organizational structure or organizational design has been set up, and look at it from that person's perspective and see if it is possible to effectively or efficiently run a country or a state from the principle of from a management perspective. I think you would get some very interesting answers, and The other thing is, you are not even allowed to question that, because uh, you can't even restructure. Where we talk of restructuring the company organization when needed, restructuring the political system is very difficult, and some of it is impossible, as they have said that the constitution is the final thing, so you can't change certain basic things in the constitution, which was made years ago by people who are all dead, and the current population can't really do much about it. So people who are all living are following some rules and regulations, and the constitution is not just talking about basic principles and basic guidelines or fundamental duties and rights. It's a Indian constitution is a very detailed, one of the largest written documents in terms of national constitution in the world, and it has lots of things like state subject, central subject, lots of procedures and rules and regulations. Then there are amendments and all that. How many ministers can be there in the parliament, in a cabinet? All sorts of things are defined. Now, when I am trying to compare these things, of course, there will be some people who will say this is not done and you can't do that, and these two things are separate and objectives are different, and you can't just compare a country with a company and all that. Well, fine, but look at it. I am sure that no chief executive, I mean, in a company, even in a very large public limited company, it is very clear that normally one person or a small group of people who are kind of together can call the shots and run the show. Even in a listed public limited company, there is a board of directors, there is a chairman, maybe there is an MD CEO who can be different from the chairman, but generally these people have power. Mukesh Ambani decides how Reliance is run, he can generally decide. Gautam Adani decides how Adani is run, the whole conglomerate. Ratan Tata, when he was chairman, could generally decide how the Tata Group works, which is hugely huge. Kumar Mangalam Birla can decide how the Birla Group works, but and that is generally how it is defined. But here, in a political kind of this thing, the country management, if we want to call it that, the thing is hugely complicated, hugely messy, and you don't have things like that in a companies. Like, you don't have competing political parties, which are inimical to each other. You don't have states, and you can have business units and products and divisions, but and strategic business units and profit centers within a company, but they are not like states or federal structure. They are not like a part of a federal structure. Plus, they are not run by rival political parties. So it's massively complicated. And if you talk to any chief executive, look at how he runs the company, even a very large company, and then see the whole thing in this thing. See this country management system, so to speak. It really, one doesn't know what to say. And the common man, the citizen, doesn't even understand, I'm sure, most of it. It is so perplexing, so complicated. There are so many in elections. What is government? Is it the central government? Is it the state government? Is it the municipal government? Who's responsible for what? He thinks of government. He doesn't even know that there are various levels of government. Then there is bureaucracy, which is again a separate thing. There are politically elected leaders, again separate. Bureaucrats are appointed people with jobs and all that. Politicians have to be elected. And who's responsible for what? The citizen sees things around him. Is it the state government's doing? Is it the doing of the municipal corporation? Is it the central government's doing? Who is doing what? Who should get credit for what? What election is this? Who runs the show? It is really complicated because, as I said, there are multiple levels of government, and at different levels there are different levels of power and all that. And then there could be rivalries, as I said. One level of government, if it is captured by one party, can be at odds with the higher or lower level of government, which can be run by the other party, opposite party, which is they are quite inimical or hostile to each other. So I do not really know what more to talk about it, and it's a complex subject, and I'm sure that there'll be many people who would have a lot to say about this, against it or in favor or whatever it is. But since we talk of efficiency, leadership, administration, effectiveness, good management, and management principles being universal, it is very interesting to see how this fits into the way we have designed, or the way things are designed to run a particular country, say a country like India. And it's not that this is the way everybody does it. Some countries have different constitutions, some countries don't even have written constitutions, formal. Some countries don't even have formal written constitutions, which is called this one single piece of document. So this is really perplexing and mind blowing and amazing, tongue in cheek, firmly, I would say. But it is an interesting exercise in thinking that how, and anybody who has effectively or efficiently run anything, you put this up to him, the smartest possible person. You even talk to the common man, and you even talk to the smartest person running a company, and show how, just tell them how we have designed the structure, or the structure has been designed to run a country, and just try to get the reactions. I'm sure they would be very interesting. Thank you.